will be counting down 3 minutes. So that will guide you on the time that you have left available for your intervention. And once you're called in, you have the order of speakers. So please make sure that you turn on your camera once you're called in. Ambassador, we have just 2 individuals who are still yet to come in: Emonjo, Jeffway International, and OECHR, just for your information. Luke from Emonjo is trying to join in, so hopefully he will come in also, as well as OECHR. But for now, Luis, we can start recording and go live, and then now the floor is your Ambassador. Or no, just 1 second, sorry. The live stream is in YouTube is coming. Please go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Juan Pablo. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. It's very nice to see you. Good morning also to our Executive Secretary. It's really nice, as I said, to be with you here in this webinar. I thank you very much for your time and for your participation. The purpose of this webinar is to share information on the organization of work for INC-5 and to provide a space for interested observers to share reflections. This session is exclusively dedicated to interventions from observers. And before I give my opening remarks, I would like to invite our Executive Secretary to deliver her opening remarks. Please, Ms. Jyoti Mathur-Philip, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and very good to see you again so soon after we just met up in Baku. All of you know me, so I'm not going to introduce myself, but I wish to welcome you very warmly to this first session of the informal webinar with observers that is being hosted with Ambassador Valles, the chair of the INC, ahead of the 5th session of the committee in Busan next week, exactly 1 week away. This is the first of 2 informal webinar sessions that aim to build on the positive experience we have had so far, convening these exchanges with observers ahead of the 3rd and 4th sessions of the INC. We think this is a very useful format and an opportunity for you to highlight your key messages to the chair, members, and fellow observers participating today. I wish to thank all of those who have expressed their interest in intervening, and I hope you will find these webinars useful to enrich our discussions at INC-5. As you all know, registrations for INC-5 closed in late September. We are delighted with the strong interest and engagement from observer organizations. Of the 3,500 registrations approved, over 2,000 were from observers, representing 574 non-governmental organizations, 19 UN entities, and 13 intergovernmental organizations. I'm also pleased to inform you that the chair, the UNEP Executive Director, and myself will once again host an in-person conversation with observers ahead of the session on 24th November, as has been our practice since the 2nd INC session. Now let me hand over to my colleague, our Observer Engagement Liaison Officer, Juan Pablo, for some updates and housekeeping remarks for this meeting. Thank you very much. Juan?
Thank you very much, Jyoti. Great to see many observers in the webinar today. I would like to highlight a few practical points for this webinar. Both sessions of the webinar will be held in English only. So please note that this session is being recorded and the recording will be posted on the INC-5 webpage. The session is also being live streamed on YouTube. So you can find the link of the live stream on the INC website under events. Given the large number of interventions, we will have to manage our time strictly. So each presenter will have a maximum of 3 minutes for their intervention. A timer will be displayed on screen to help you manage your delivery. To allow the greatest possible number of presentations, we will not be opening for a question and answer session today. but please use the chat box if you are experiencing technical difficulties. A member of our Secretariat team will then respond to you directly to help you. And as always, we also wish to remind you that the Code of Conduct is applicable to United Nations system events, which is available on our webpage. So the UN system is committed to enabling events at which everyone can participate in an inclusive, respectful, and safe environment. So we count on each of you to uphold this commitment. We are now just a week out from the start of INC-5, and we wish to share with you some additional information to help you plan your participation at the session. We invite all observers to read the information note to participants, which is constantly updated and available on the INC-5 page. Important information on badge collection, on access to the venue, and other practical information is available in this document. And as mentioned by the Executive Secretary, the in-person conversation with observers will take place in room 205, contact group 2 room, on the 24th of November from 3 to 4 p.m. The in-session documents platform will be available for INC-5, and this is a password-protected platform for accredited observer organizations to self-upload their in-session statements. A notification has been sent to all the registered observers with further information on the platform, which will be available in session. And this concludes the Secretariat remarks. Let me hand over the floor back to the Chair for the next agenda item. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jyoti, and thank you very much, Juan Pablo. Distinguished observers, participants, dear friends, the organizational work for INC-5 in Busan is critical to ensuring a constructive, transparent, and inclusive dialogue as we move into the concluding stages of negotiating a legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. As chair, I'm dedicated to supporting a process that enables each delegation to contribute meaningfully and ensures our work is effective and efficient. As you know, on October 17, I distributed the scenario note with my proposal on organizational work for INC-5. And also on the 22nd of October was distributed the third chair's non-paper to facilitate the substantive debate and negotiations on the legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. The strategies outlined in the scenario note are intended to optimize the 7 available days of negotiations in INC-5. As you know, and I've been saying, we would have only 63 hours for our work in INC-5, so we need to optimize those hours every hour, every minute that we have in Busan. Sorry, and also we need to ensure that we can conclude our work within the established time frame. To support these objectives, the scenario note has been carefully structured to, first, provide a clear pathway for adopting a legally binding instrument at INC-5, thereby fulfilling the mandate we have been entrusted with. And second, to offer ample space for deliberation, debate, and negotiation. To manage our workload effectively, the scenario note proposes establishing 4 contact groups and 1 legally drafting group, which this one, the legal drafting group, was already established in INC-4 in Ottawa. This structure is intended to allocate resources strategically, allowing them to prioritize the issues that most require their expertise. The INC-5 meeting calendar will be sequenced to prevent overlapping. The INC session will begin with contact groups where we anticipate a higher level of convergence. My commitment as chair remains steadfast. I will facilitate constructive conversations, thoughtful debates that will lead us to adopt a final text for the instrument. Throughout our journey, we have engaged in open and productive dialogue, fostering a spirit of multilateralism essential for our collective success. As we move toward INC-5, I'm committed to upholding the INC's principles of efficiency, inclusivity, and transparency. Our collective efforts here will lay the groundwork for a legally binding instrument in Busan that will have meaningful and lasting impact on our shared mission to combat and end plastic pollution. The provision of the scenario note are designed to structure the discussion and negotiation process. Its ultimate goal is to help us deliver a robust legal instrument on plastic pollution. I'm confident that we will all achieve our goals together, paving the way for a future in which environmental stewardship and collaborative global actions are at the forefront for our efforts. I thank you once again for your participation. I'm confident that your support in this process will lead us to a legally binding instrument text for the end of our negotiations in Busan. I thank you very much. And now I would like to open the floor for your interventions. And I would like to see now the list of participations of interventions. And now I would like to give the floor, starting with the Center for Science and Environment. Please, the Center for Science and Environment, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening. As we approach the 5th session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to End Plastic Pollution, our expectations at the Center for Science and Environment in India focus on fostering discussions that prioritize human health, equity, and accountability. The harmful effects of plastic pollution on human health, from toxic chemicals emitted and leached throughout the plastic life cycle to microplastics contaminating our food, water, and human bodies, must be a key focus in these negotiations. The global treaty must incorporate clear, enforceable measures to protect human health at every stage of the plastic life cycle. National efforts alone are insufficient to tackle the escalating plastic pollution crisis without global commitments that are legally binding. Global bans on problematic plastic products and harmful chemicals, guided by scientific criteria, will enable the design of safer and more sustainable materials, fostering a non-toxic circular economy. Establishing uniform standards for product design, composition, and recyclability will enhance recycling efficiency and limit the spread of plastic that disrupt recycling systems. Operationalizing the polluter pays principle is essential to ensure accountability. Current schemes like extended producer responsibility have contributed minimally to funding plastic waste management. A more effective approach would be establishing a dedicated fund to support developing countries, including small island developing states, which often lack infrastructure to manage plastic waste effectively. A key tool for this would be the Global Plastic Pollution Fee, requiring producers to cover the true cost of managing plastic pollution. This would encourage better production practices, fund sustainable waste management systems, promote innovation in reusable and recyclable materials, and support mechanisms such as technology transfer, financial assistance, and capacity building. The outcomes of INC-5 should strike a balance between ambition and practicality, keeping people at the heart of the negotiations. I thank you for your time.
I thank very much to the Center for Science and Environment. And now I would like to give the floor to Global Youth Coalition on Plastic Pollution. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellency, I'm Madhuvanti from India, and I speak on behalf of the Youth Constituency to represent the needs and rights of youth across the world in our collective efforts to end plastic pollution. It is imperative to remind ourselves that we are dealing with not just an environmental issue, but a geopolitical and a socio-economic crisis, which will sustain and inflate our dependence on fossil fuels, thereby accelerating climate change and its debilitating impacts. We sincerely appreciate the Chair's efforts in bridging diverse views and advancing the discussions ahead of INC-5. The structure of the non-papers offer a valuable starting point for our work in Busan. However, we believe that the content requires further fortification. In this regard, we advocate for the employment of binding language, explicit inclusion of chemicals and polymers, specific references to extended producer responsibility, and robust integration of environmental and social justice principles throughout the text. Furthermore, as the process has been perceived as lacking inclusivity, we strongly recommend that the treaty formally acknowledges the distinct voices of rights holders and stakeholders who are disproportionately affected by plastic pollution. As youth, we urge that the negotiations move beyond framing the plastics crisis merely as a waste management or a littering issue. By placing excessive reliance solely on downstream measures, we are continuing to treat only the symptoms and not the root cause of the disease. We beseech the negotiators to pursue a paradigm shift that prioritizes human rights and calls for upstream measures, including reducing plastic production, eliminating toxicity, and designing for durability, reuse, and repair. We are hopeful that you will lead the final round of negotiations ambitiously to deliver a treaty that reflects a comprehensive systems-wide approach which addresses the entire life cycle of plastics. This treaty is a critical opportunity in the history of humankind to reframe the flawed narrative of profits versus planet and people, which considers the environmental and social costs of doing business as mere externalities. We must understand that without a healthy planet, societies cannot thrive, and without a thriving society, there is no economic prosperity. Therefore, we urge the negotiators to understand that INC-5 is a now or never opportunity, and your decisions in Busan will make or break our future. Finally, I would like to use this opportunity to invite you to the assembly happening on the 24th of November in Busan, which aims to amplify the demands and expectations of the youth and stakeholders alike. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and we look forward to Your Excellency's resolute leadership in INC-5 to protect and preserve the planet for the current and future generations. Thank you.
I thank you very much to the Global Youth Coalition on Plastic Pollution. And now I would like to give the floor to the World Economic Forum. Webb, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you to the INC Secretariat for the opportunity to speak at this pivotal moment just days before INC-5. I'm Clément Schmidt, the Director of the Global Plastic Action Partnership at the World Economic Forum. Since 2018, GPAP, a public-private partnership supported by the UK and Canadian government, has been at the forefront of the efforts to combat plastic pollution at national and global level. GPAP's community has been strongly growing, and we cannot wait to soon announce that we've achieved our vision to support 25 countries by 2025. With our growing community, we share a common vision and mission to translate commitments into action to eradicate plastic pollution, and through this, enable a more sustainable and inclusive world. We are humbled to convene a very diverse stakeholders from the public and the private sector, civil society, local community, including the informal sector, in a neutral manner, both nationally as well as globally, to identify solutions to plastic pollution. Our work focuses on three core pillars. National and stakeholder ownership. Through our national plastic platforms, we bring together stakeholders across the entire plastic value chain, and together they create ambitious roadmaps, prioritize action, and drive long-term systemic change. Evidence-based decision-making, second, to ensure that all actions are grounded in robust data analysis and experts' reviews aligned with national priority. And last but not least, inclusive and holistic approaches. At the global level, the World Economic Forum leverages its convening power on key issues such as financing. Through the Financing Coordination Group, we work with the World Bank, OECD, UNEP-FI, and others, alongside governments like Ecuador, Ghana, Indonesia, and the USA. At INC-5, we will continue to support the treaty process by convening stakeholders and member states delegates to foster dialogue, and we hope convergence around some critical elements for the Busan's negotiation, but also to advance the implementation phase. The treaty represents a critical milestone, not an endpoint. It lays the foundation for addressing one of the most significant environmental and development challenges of our time. It will contribute to achieving the Sustainable Development Goal and complement other existing multilateral environmental agreements. However, sustained action and implementation are essential. GPAP's community demonstrates how global efforts can translate into local action, and how implementation experiences can inform global policy discussion. Looking ahead into 2025 and beyond, the World Economic Forum is looking forward to contributing to the implementation of the needed system change, thanks to our unique ability to convene multi-stakeholder community and foster private-private collaboration. Finally, I would like to invite all stakeholders to join our growing and action-oriented community. We need all of you to empower countries to drive positive impact on the ground. Thank you.
I thank you very much. Thank you to the World Economic Forum. And now I'd like to give the floor to the Scientists Coalition for an Effective Plastic Treaty. Please, you have the floor.
Good morning, good evening, everybody. The Scientists Coalition is a body of more than 400 independent scientists from over 60 countries with expertise in plastic pollution. Our scientists' message is clear. We cannot simply rely on waste management and cleanups. The objective of the treaty must be to end plastic pollution as per the mandate and based on environmental legal principles of prevention, precaution, and polluter pays. And ending plastic pollution will require controlling the source of non-essential, hazardous, and unsustainable plastics. Multidisciplinary sciences tell us that ending plastic pollution will require parties to agree on the following binding commitments. It will require parties to be guided by the top of the waste hierarchy, to set ambitious targets to significantly reduce the amount of plastics produced and consumed, to phase out non-essential chemicals of concern associated with plastics, present in plastics, to reduce the production of micro and nanoplastics, to reduce the releases of micro and nanoplastics from products, to disclose health, safety, and sustainability information about plastics, to ensure plastics are trackable and traceable right across the supply chain, to regularly monitor and report on progress toward ending plastic pollution, and to protect the human rights of all affected populations, workers, and communities. An essential use approach adapted so it is fit for purpose for the future treaty could allow time-bound exemptions for plastics identified as the most hazardous and unsustainable plastics listed in the treaty annex. The essential use approach would allow exemptions for those plastics assessed and found currently critical for the health, safety, and functioning of society, and where no safer nor more sustainable alternatives and substitutes are currently available. The implementation of the Global Plastics Treaty, as well as national implementation plans, will need the early support of a dedicated independent science policy interface composed of a diverse range of plastic pollution experts, including Indigenous rights holders. And the science policy interface will need mechanisms to manage and mitigate conflicts of interest. A successful treaty will need a dedicated financial mechanism, as well as technical cooperation, capacity building, and cooperative and trade-related provisions that support parties in meeting their obligations to the treaty and ensure a just transition for affected populations, communities, and workers across the full plastics life cycle. And last but certainly not least, all measures taken must prioritise human rights, including the human rights to a safe, clean and healthy environment, the human right to access to information, the human right to science, as well as the rights of Indigenous peoples. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the Scientists Coalition for an Effective Plastic Treaty. And now I give the floor to the Stitching the Ocean Cleanup. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. The Ocean Cleanup is a non-profit international project that develops and deploys technologies with a mission to rid the world oceans of plastic. We welcome the Chair's non-paper, especially the inclusion of an obligation for parties to collaborate on remediation of legacy plastic pollution, including in areas beyond national jurisdiction. The non-paper states that parties should identify, evaluate, and prioritize locations or accumulation zones most affected by existing plastic pollution, and take mitigation and remediation measures, including cleanup activities. An example of such accumulation zones are plastic garbage patches, where plastics are trapped forever in oceanic gyres. And while we commend the inclusion of this text, we like to point out to INC members the need for clear definitions. The meaning of words such as remediation, accumulation zones, and hotspots must be clearly defined. And additionally, we recommend inclusion of definitions for legacy oceanic plastic pollution and riverine plastic emission. Riverine plastic emissions are the mass of plastic transported by rivers and waterways from inland sources into coastal waters and ocean, including areas beyond national jurisdiction. Addressing legacy plastic effectively requires access to accurate and comprehensive data. We'd like to emphasize the need for a global framework for data collection and monitoring, for managing, measuring, and reporting on the effectiveness of the treaty. Effective monitoring and measurement will form the basis of accountability within the treaty. Remediation is a form of monitoring. Systematic tracking of riverine plastic emissions provides a global, quantifiable metric to evaluate the effectiveness of implemented upstream and midstream policies. This creates a feedback loop that not only evaluates the treaty's efficacy, but also enhances efforts to reduce plastic pollution, leading to tangible improvements downstream. It ensures a robust accountability framework for all parties involved. Innovation is key to solving plastic pollution. The Ocean Cleanup co-convened the Innovation Alliance for a Global Plastics Treaty to unite innovators and to advance the role of innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship in the treaty. Solutions exist, but they require the support of policies and innovative financing mechanisms, such as outcome-based financing models, to scale their impact and contribute to ending pollution. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Ocean Cleanup. And I give the floor now to the European Bioplastics. Please, European Bioplastics, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Executive Secretary, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking the Chair and the Secretariat for organizing this webinar for observers. My name is Julie Peters and I represent European Bioplastics, the European association representing about 90 members from the whole value chain of bio-based, biodegradable and compostable plastics. To address plastic pollution at its roots and support global climate action, European Bioplastics supports an ambitious future legal instrument which catalyzes a transition to certified bio-based, biodegradable and/or compostable plastics as complementary tools to help end plastic pollution by 2040 and to ensure a carbon-neutral future. Mr. Chair, European Bioplastics welcomes your proposed approach of the third iteration of the non-paper, aiming to assist the collective efforts to finalize the negotiations on the treaty in Busan. We largely welcome the proposed simplification in structure and content, and we also welcome a focused treaty adopted swiftly that will be complemented by technical guidelines and annexes to be developed leading up to the diplomatic conference and made concrete by the following conferences of the parties. We believe that the value propositions of bio-based, biodegradable and compostable plastics should be recognized in that guidance. The measures of the future legally binding instruments should cover the whole life cycle of plastics in a circular economy approach, from raw materials extraction to their production, and from design to their use, consumption, and end of life. Various strategies can be combined to achieve the objectives of the treaty, such as, in our minds, including the promotion of alternative plastics and substitutes. In this respect, European Bioplastics welcomes the Chair's mentioning of alternatives and non-plastic substitutes in Articles 3, 5, and 12 of the non-paper. And when it comes to plastic product design in Article 5, we see great value in point 1b and the proposed language. We support your approach as a starting point for discussions. However, we hope to see raised ambition from the starting point on several aspects. Allow me to make some suggestions. In Article 5, we believe sustainable plastic alternatives could be further strengthened by adding a requirement to promote their demand on top of innovation-focused measures. EUBP welcomes the inclusion of the life cycle view in Article 6. We would like to see the reporting requirements include the use of sustainable plastic alternatives. Finally, we ask to include the reduction of GHG emissions in Article 7 with the target of aligning the future instrument with the Paris Agreement on climate change. Finally, I gladly further develop our position with all present today in Busan. starting on the 24th with the in-person observer meeting. Good luck, Mr. Chair. Good luck to the INC Secretariat and to all negotiators. And thanks again for the opportunity to address all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you, European Bioplastics. And now I would like to give the floor to Planet Tracker. Please, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to present at this webinar alongside other observers. I represent the sustainable finance think tank Planet Tracker, a not-for-profit organization aligning capital markets with planetary boundaries. We work closely with financial institutions and today represent 75 investors with a combined 6.8 trillion in assets under management, united in their call for petrochemical companies to reduce fossil fuel dependency and eliminate hazardous chemicals in plastics. Petrochemical companies are a major contributor to plastic production, and financial institutions recognize the industry's role in driving plastic pollution, climate change, biodiversity loss, and its harmful impacts on human health. These impacts present significant plastic-related business risks, not only to petrochemical companies producing the plastic polymers, but also to investors. These risks include regulatory and reputational risks, plastic-related litigation, and increasing consumer demand for safe, sustainable products. The financial sector acknowledges that these risks could be financially material for companies and for their investors. And this is why financial institutions are publicly advocating for an ambitious treaty to end plastic pollution and insist that governments include binding rules covering the full life cycle of plastics from polymer production to end-of-life disposal. Together with financial institutions, we're calling for targets on sustainable levels of polymer production to mitigate environmental impacts and reduce the demand for fossil fuels. Broad support across the finance and business sector, including the recent endorsement of the Bridge to Busan Declaration, underscores this commitment. Additionally, together with financial institutions, we urge the treaty to include mandatory restrictions on toxic chemicals and plastics and measures to enhance transparency around plastic composition. Investors are concerned that without these, the downstream burden of managing plastic waste will disproportionately fall on developing countries. The financial sector emphasizes that binding measures are essential, as voluntary measures have proven insufficient to address the scale of the issue. Binding commitments provide clarity and a level playing field for companies across borders, enabling the finance sector's support in providing capital. We emphasize the finance sector stands ready to support companies that align with these treaty goals and request that negotiators make the treaty enforceable, ambitious, and outcome-orientated. There's broad support for these goals. Beyond the petrochemical investor statement we represent, other organizations have gathered support from over 600 institutions, collectively managing tens of trillions of assets under management. These institutions recognize the Plastics Treaty as essential for sustainable economic growth and environmental stability. And in light of this substantial backing, we strongly encourage you to support an ambitious treaty that addresses the full life cycle of plastics. The comprehensive approach is crucial to effectively tackling plastic pollution in line with the latest science and meeting the pressing demands of financial stakeholders. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you very much to Planet Tracker. Now I would like to give the floor to WWF. Please, WWF, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you also, Executive Director and Secretary, for organizing this meeting. We in WWF are excited 1 week before the negotiations starts in Busan. We are slightly optimistic, and we hope that we can all, everyone who is traveling to Busan, work for a strong treaty that will actually end plastic pollution. It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and there are signs that countries are improving their positions as we are moving towards the last meeting. I'd like to thank you, Chair, also for the non-paper that you have put out, creating the necessary basis for negotiations and taking us away from an impossible, what seemed like an impossible situation after INC-4. Now we have a basis to start discussions on. Still, many areas and placeholders to be filled in, and it's now really up to the government negotiators to raise the level of ambition to fill this treaty with the binding global rules that are really essential for solving plastic pollution. We need a treaty that solves the problem, and we know what kind of treaty that is. All science is telling us that without binding global rules, we will not solve this problem. And we already know a lot of the concrete measures that are needed. We need to ban and phase out the avoidable and problematic plastic products. That's already happening in many countries. Now we need to see it at international level. We need to phase out the harmful chemicals and additives. We need to put in place mandatory product design requirements to make sure all plastic products are designed for reuse and recycling. We need strong means of implementation and financial support, and we need a treaty that can strengthen over time. And here we'd encourage everyone to look to the BB&J agreement adopted last year, where there is good precedent on decision-making that allows for that gradual strengthening. Finally, let's not forget that we are in the middle of a global plastic pollution crisis, and we have this unique opportunity to actually get out of this crisis. It will be hard. We need to be prepared for all types of scenarios. We must not let process concerns stop us from delivering a strong result. Our mandate is not to find the lowest common denominator, but it is to make a historic plastic pollution treaty that solves this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you to WWF. And now I give the floor to Girls Education Mission International. Please, Girls Education Mission International, you have the floor. Your microphone, please, is muted. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to be part of the panelists and also as an observer for the INC-5 after being part of the INC-4 in Ottawa, Canada. And so my name is Ketura Sharma, the Executive Director of Girls Education Mission International from Nigeria, which is an organization focused on the education and empowerment of women and girls. So as an organization, we recognize the significant threat plastic pollution poses on women's health and environment. And for that, we recommend the effort of the INC to develop a legally binding instrument to address the plastic pollution. So let me begin with an established fact, which affirms that the social and economic prosperity of all people relies on a healthy and functional biosphere. Plastic pollution and the resulting degradation of marine and coastal ecosystem and the services they provide, which treating human life and human rights. So these impacts are felt disproportionately by socially disadvantaged groups such as women, most especially in rural communities and among the urban poor women, who may be uniquely exposed to environmental threat while facing limited access to social protection, care, and the resources to build resilience. You know, studies suggest that women are the highest consumers of cosmetic and personal products, and that often include microplastic and microbeads. It is also believed that gender-specific roles and attitudes shape waste management practices of women and men in household and public places. So women are the major determinants of household goods and services, of which you believe with me on that. So as an organization who fights for the rights of women and advocate for the inclusion of women in decision-making on issues affecting them, Girls Education Mission International recommends to the INC Secretariat that the treaty should recognize women as important agents of change whose active participation in the environment protection is necessary. We expect that the INC Secretariat will recognize and address gender pattern along the plastic values change and effect approach that can lead to make effective and appropriate intervention. We also expect they ensure that gender mainstreaming from planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of the treaty, which is a key to ensure women and men benefit equally from action on plastic marine pollution, including provision for targeting empowerment and incorporating all elements of gender mainstreaming in the process. So as an observer for the INC-4 and now for the INC-5, Girls Education Mission International called for a strong action to tackle plastic pollution within the gender sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I thank Girls Education Mission International. And now I'd like to give the floor to Emonio with the International. Please, you have the floor. Can you hear me? Emonio, yes, the International, you have the floor. If not, we will come back to you. And now, yes, no, I would like to give the floor then to the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. Please, the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, you have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Just Aka, president of NGO Blue, a young activist committed to a fight against plastic pollution on the sea in Côte d'Ivoire, and a member of the Advocacy Commission of PACJA. We are the initiator of a regional youth forum on blue economy and the first human chain against plastic pollution in Côte d'Ivoire. Let me thanks the organizer of this webinar for the opportunity to discuss the development of the legally binding international treaty against plastic pollution. This treaty must reflect both the urgency of the crisis and the need of environmental and social justice. States that have historically contributed disproportionately to plastic pollution must take responsibility to financing the effort of developing countries. This fund should support the improvement of waste management infrastructure in Africa, where systems remain insufficient to cope with growing pollution. Foster innovation in sustainable alternative to reduce our reliance of single-use plastic. This funding must be accessible, unconditional, and aligned with the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. At the same time, it's crucial to empower youth organizations in Africa. These young leaders are the key actor of raising awareness, educating community. We know that youth leaders, youth organizations are directly in contact with community and driving local action against plastic pollution. By supporting these organizations with training, tools, and resources, we can create the most robust network of agents capable of mobilizing the community and acting the change maker in the responsible countries. Finally, a strong mechanism for monitoring and transparency is essential to ensure the treaty effectiveness. This mechanism relies on a systematic and harmonized collection of data globally, including access to the extent of plastic pollution, particularly in our oceans and coastal area. For us, it's crucial and it's critical to map the most affected zone, identify the type of plastic present, and evaluate the impact on biodiversity and human health. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. And now I'd like to give the floor to the Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Executive Secretary, and the rest of the Secretariat for this opportunity to make an intervention. I represent Upholding Life and Nature, a Philippine-based NGO, which is also a member of the ELO network. Mr. Chair, I'd like to call your attention to the omission of persons with disabilities in the current draft text, especially on just transition. Persons with disabilities should be at the forefront of the plastics discourse, as they truly are. Based on our consultations, they are heavy users of plastics, especially single-use ones, and these are not always strictly covered by medical exemptions, but they are no less essential. For example, straws are needed for the very basic act of drinking. Plastic cups are preferred over breakable ones to avoid injuries. They are also lighter than ceramic or metal alternatives for ease of travel. Many use diapers and need plastics to dispose of them properly when they leave their homes to enjoy a regular life on an equal basis with others. Plastics can also aggravate their health problems, especially nanoplastics and microplastics. Given these obvious connections, persons with disabilities remain invisible in the current discourse. We're not sure if they're included in the term persons in vulnerable situations, which seems to be preferred in the draft text. I'm not sure why there seems to be a hesitation, if not aversion, to identify persons with disabilities as a sector of concern, given the repeated reference to other relevant stakeholders such as waste pickers, indigenous peoples, the youth, and the like. What I know is that there's already a convention on the rights of persons with disabilities, and it states that they have the right to participate in matters that affect their living conditions and in the conduct of public affairs. Please rectify this glaring omission. They need to be included in the discussion now. They need to be consulted because they will be directly affected by this treaty. I therefore urge, Mr. Chair, to keep this sector in mind. We can start by piercing through this legal invisibility and explicitly naming persons with disabilities in the proposed instrument. Thank you for this opportunity, and we wish you a successful passage of the proposed treaty under your wise guidance.
Thank you, and I thank Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide. And now I'd like to give the floor to the International Alliance of Waste Pickers. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished members, members of the INC Secretariat, including the Executive Secretary, and my esteemed colleagues from worker organizations, trade unions, and civil society. I am Kabir Arora, the General Secretary of International Alliance of Waste Pickers, representing 460,000 waste pickers across 32 countries. Today, I stand before you with a deep sense of purpose and responsibility to share our vision for a world free from plastic pollution. A vision shaped by the hands and the voices of those who confront this crisis daily, primarily waste pickers starting with, but other workers in the plastic value chain too. Let us reflect on the incredible journey we have been embarked on since the 2022 UNIA resolution. I vividly remember and recall walking alongside my colleague Soledad, who passionately articulated the waste pickers' vision for this treaty at UNIA. And it was a historic movement filled with hope and determination to tackle plastic pollution head-on. Since then, we have achieved significant milestones, but the urgency of our mission has only grown. I live in Goa, a breathtaking biodiversity hotspot. Whether hiking the lush ghats or swimming in the sea, one always encountered the pervasive reality of plastic pollution, multi-layered plastics littering our land and our oceans. Along this, I see the tireless efforts of our colleagues, waste pickers who work every day to clean up what others discard. Today, we stand at a pivotal moment in these negotiations. We are closer than ever to forge an international agreement that will for the first time acknowledge informal economy workers and place them at the forefront for a just transition. We would like to strengthen the article on just transition. We recommend that language should not be may, but should be shall, and ensure that article reflects the clear commitments to reporting, stakeholder engagement, and actionable guidance. We also explicitly want the recognition of waste pickers in the text. Without explicit recognition, their invaluable contribution to reducing plastic pollution is being overlooked. Then we also want that the just transition and waste pickers be defined clearly and leaving no one behind. Finally, our guiding principle remains firm. Nothing for us without us. Waste pickers must be included in every process stage from negotiation to implementation and governance. Our colleagues' expertise and dedication are critical to a just and equitable transition. Let's use this treaty to create a lasting impact for the planet and the people who have devoted their lives, including 34 million waste pickers whose lives will be positively impacted by this agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank International Alliance of Waste Pickers. Now I'd like to give the floor to Zonta International.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity to Zonta International to give our reflections on this treaty. My name is Joanne Kabayambi. I represent Zonta International at UNEP because we believe in building the better world for women and girls who are recognized, whose rights are recognized in health, in environment, and everywhere. And I want also to add my voice to the rest of the people that we need a treaty that recognizes women in all aspects. So this has will be extended to and linked to the broader economy, politics, human rights, and society. And it will be able, this treaty will be able to hinge on elements like acceptance, adoption of this treaty, resource mobilization, the capacity enough in knowledge, technology, and systems, and public awareness. I therefore, on behalf of Zonta International, propose that we add in the preamble the recognizing the plastic pollution elimination can only be achieved through primary a concerted global effort, which is then complemented by national efforts. And we add that in Article 1, I suggest that we widen the objective to include both human and marine life as follows. The objective of the treaty is to protect human and marine life environment. In Article 2, we also suggest that the definitions of plastic pollution, just transition, sustainable plastic production, nanoplastics, plastic pellets, plastic powder to be included and defined very well. Finance in Article 11, financing mechanism, we suggest that we insert a global financing facility that will be established under UNEP to finance plastic pollution management worldwide. Then on Article 12, capacity building, that technical assistance, technology transfer, and international cooperation, education on plastic pollution and marine environment to be promoted in schools as well as outside schools through civic education. Also to develop and promote specific courses in high institutions, technology, science, management, and plastic pollution. And also in the, lastly, the awareness of education and research. We suggest that behavior change communication on plastic pollution and marine environment, and also community and civic education to be included. I also would like to say that this will benefit all the women, the girls, because Zonta believes in a world where women can access all resources. I thank you.
Thank you, Zonta International. And now I give the floor to Reloop Platform. Please, you have the floor.
Good morning. Reloop is an international organization, NGO, working at the center of policymaking with governments, industry, and stakeholders. Today, I want to highlight 4 critical areas where immediate and decisive action is needed. It's essential to tackle global plastics pollution. The first is prioritizing waste management in the global south. Globally, 53% of municipal waste remains uncontrolled, accounting for about 1.1 billion tons annually. This represents a failure to manage one of our most pressing environmental challenges. Controlled waste management, where waste is collected, sent for recycling, composting, or properly engineered landfills, must become a global priority. Achieving this requires commitments to funding infrastructure, providing technical assistance, and building institutional capacity, particularly in the global south. At least 95% of the world's population should have access to basic waste management services. This is not just an environmental issue, it's a humanitarian one, ensuring cleaner communities and a healthier ecosystem for all. Number 2 is extended producer responsibility. It holds producers accountable for the full life cycle of their products, covering collection, sorting, and recycling, reuse, disposal even. Without robust EPR, the burden of managing plastic falls disproportionately on governments and communities least equipped to handle it. A well-designed mandatory EPR framework can shift responsibility to those who profit from plastic, driving real change and shared accountability. 3, clear binding targets, transparent reporting, and consistent definitions are vital for progress. INC must urgently address measurement methods and reporting systems to track progress and identify areas for intervention. We must also learn from existing successes. The European Union's Single-Use Plastics Directive and upcoming Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation offer proven frameworks, ambitious targets, and monitoring methods. Borrowing from this work will save time and allow us to act faster and with greater impact. And finally, number 4 is deposit return programs. Global beach litter audits show us that 2/3 of the top 10 most litter items by weight are beverage packaging. Deposit return systems offer an immediate and impactful solution to this problem. In Europe, deposit return has doubled or even tripled collection rates for beverage packaging in a few years. These systems can be designed in ways which work with local conditions like the Global South. This is low-hanging fruit, and we can deliver significant results rapidly. We need to prioritize these elements. The solutions already exist, and now we need the political will and the commitment to act. I thank you.
I thank you, ReLoop platform. And now I'd like to give the floor to the International Organization for Standardization. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity. My name is Sarah Parker, and I'm presenting on behalf of ISO, the International Organization for Standardization. ISO strives to make lives easier, safer, and better through international standards. We welcome the ongoing efforts to develop a legally binding instrument that protects the health of humans and the environment from the scourge of plastic pollution. ISO supports the Chair's and INC members' concerted efforts to achieve this. We are encouraged to note the mentions of international standards in the third non-paper circulated by the Chair. International standards are consensus-based documents where experts from around the world agree on the best way of doing something, for example, measuring the degradation of microplastics in the marine environment. International standards already exist on a wide range of topics that can support efforts to tackle plastic pollution, including standards on circular economy, eco-labeling, biodegradability, among many other topics across the life cycle of plastics, which you can see on iso.org/plastic pollution. The members of the INC will set the ambition and the direction for action. International standards can help harmonize global efforts for the implementation and monitoring of the legally binding instrument. International standards make it easier to measure, compare, and verify compliance across different regions and sectors. When organizations use international standards, they can be sure that they are taking action aligned with global best practice, using a consistent, harmonized approach and enhancing global accountability and recognition. International standards are by nature voluntary. However, they can be referenced in regulation, supporting policymakers in driving high integrity in the fight against plastic pollution. These standards, underpinned by international consensus, are part of a broader framework of international cooperation known as quality infrastructure, which ensures their reliability, credibility, and uniformity for effective global implementation. International standards help increase transparency and streamline certification processes while not creating unnecessary barriers to trade. As an impartial, not-for-profit, non-governmental organization, ISO operates through a transparent process involving diverse stakeholders, including representation from developing countries. We can provide the neutral multi-staker platform to more efficiently develop new international standards where states identify a need for them. ISO members, that is national bodies in 172 countries, could be part of the joint effort to implement the obligations under the instrument. ISO also has a significant capacity building program for national standards bodies in developing countries. ISO remains available to support the INC however we can. My colleague, Monia Korta, will be present in Busan, as well as the chair of ISO Technical Committee 323 on Circular Economy, Catherine Chevauché. Please feel free to reach out to Monia before or during INC-5 if you have any questions. At Korta, KORTER@iso.org. Thank you for your attention and once again for this opportunity to take the floor.
I thank International Organization for Standardization. And now I would like to give the floor to Kemi Foundation. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Madam Executive Secretary. My name is Nancy Marango. I serve at Kemi Foundation. A multidimensional plastic treaty ought to prioritize the integration of computer-aided tools, such as geographical information systems and artificial intelligence to tackle plastic pollution. GIS and other geospatial technologies enable precise mapping and monitoring of plastic waste distribution, enabling policymakers and stakeholders identify pollution hotspots and design targeted interventions. By incorporating these tools into the treaty, communities can benefit from data-driven insights that enhance resource allocation, optimize cleanup efforts, and track progress real-time. This approach empowers marginalized groups, particularly the youth, women, and persons with disabilities, by equipping them with technical skills on how to use the computer-aided tools in providing them the platform to practically innovate locally led interventions on plastic pollution and prevention. Furthermore, the treaty ought to emphasize on capacity building and in alignment with computer-aided tools with integration of indigenous and local knowledge systems. This combination can drive transformative change by addressing the dual challenges of environmental degradation and health impacts caused by plastic pollution. Finally, computer-aided tools for informed decision-making for an effective treaty will not only conserve ecosystems, but also foster inclusive participation, ensuring that all communities contribute to benefit from a sustainable plastic-free future. Importantly, it will strengthen the implementation of Article 5 and 12. Thank you, Chair.
I thank Kemi Foundation, and now I give the floor to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, everyone. Let me firstly thank the Executive Secretary and the Secretariat for this meeting. My name is Ayush Batterden. I'm the Chief of the Right to Development Section at the OCHR. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, is issuing an open letter on human rights priorities for the 5th session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to develop an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. The letter will address imposing legally binding provisions across the full cycle of plastics, integrating human rights in operative text of the treaty in order to ensure policy coherence in line with human rights treaties, norms and standards and instruments, guaranteeing the rights to access to information, access to justice, and rights to participation, including by women, youth, indigenous peoples, and persons with disability, and other stakeholders, aligning action to address plastic pollution with the best available economic, scientific evidence and precautionary principle, ensuring a just transition for the people disproportionately affected by plastic production and pollution, and operationalizing the principles of equity and polluter pays. The second document our office is also preparing and submitting for the meeting is the paper on right to development and its synergy with the right to healthy environment. The paper provides introduction to the right to development and the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable development, and what and the interlinkages between these two rights, as well as the right to development, how it is affected by the multiple planetary crises, and how can the right to development address the multiple planetary crises and advance the just transition. The paper will also provide how can the application of the principle of equity and international assistance and cooperation in accordance with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and the respective capabilities support the realization of the rights to development and the healthy environment. We will upload these documents on the conference platform, and we wish you a very successful outcome to the conference. Thank you very much.
I thank the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And now I'd like to give the floor to the Community Action Against Plastic Waste. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to thank the Secretariat for the opportunity to organize this important observer interventions. Having said that, my name is Ahmed. I'm from Community Action Against Plastic Waste, and organizations that work at the intersection of policy and local communities engagement in 71 impacted communities in 21 countries. Our intervention will be focusing majorly on 7 key issues that we believe should be prioritized in agreeing on this important global deal. One, we would like to call for importance of cutting global plastic production. This is very important. Like I'll use a very simple analogy. If you want to address an overflowed room with water, the first thing we need to do is to turn on the tap. This is a very simple analogy that everybody can relate to it. This is why it's important that we must prioritize reducing plastic production globally as a measure to ensure that we can get to the root of addressing plastic pollution. Secondly, I'd like to talk about issues of chemical of concern in plastic use currently. We know that in many communities, particularly in the global south, plastic chemicals, harmful chemical use in plastic production is affecting people and driving many of them more into poverty because they need to spend money that they do not have in the first place on their health because of the exposure to these toxic chemicals. I'd like to also talk quickly about solutions. We need to prioritize solutions that are, concretely about zero waste. We need to stay away from all sort of forced solutions, ensure that we prioritize reuse system, repair, refurbish, deposit return system. All of these are key solutions that actually have benefit for the community and for the people and everyone at large. We must prioritize voices of key stakeholders, including independent scientists, waste speakers, informal waste speakers, and many people that normally does not have voice in these spaces. We must ensure that there's a dedicated access and predictable multilateral funding to ensure that this treaty is, financed and able to be implemented. Why I talked about healthcare plastic use in healthcare, a lot of time I've been talked about being accepted. We need to be careful about this so that we don't accept all plastic in healthcare. We need to find sustainable use of plastic in healthcare, and this must be, designed appropriately. Lastly, we must prioritize the voice of subnational and local governments. These are very key stakeholders, and they must have a clear mandate in implementing this treaty. I thank you, Chair, and the Secretariat. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I thank the Community Action Against Plastic Waste. And now I would like to give the floor to Harvard University. You have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Aruni Ranawira. I am a graduate student at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. We are partnering with the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction on a research initiative to understand how plastic pollution generated during disasters caused by natural hazards creates immediate and long-term disruptions to waste management infrastructure, communities, and workforce. In Busan, we are seeking to interview observer parties and country focal points who have an interest in or background in understanding these issues. Specifically, we aim to understand the following questions. How do disasters caused by natural hazards generate plastic pollution through destruction of hard infrastructure, and at what scale? In what ways does plastic pollution disrupt soft infrastructure and the ability to deliver services in the wake of disasters? And 3, what can member states do to minimize the damage of plastic leakage on hard and soft infrastructure during disasters going forward? We are also developing 3 country case studies to understand global best practices and challenges in managing plastic pollution as it relates to disasters caused by natural hazards. Currently, our 3 countries of focus are Nigeria, Greenland, and Antigua and Barbuda. If you or your organization would be interested in speaking with us in Busan regarding these 3 countries or any other member states, please reach out to the email address I will place in the chat. I look forward to meeting soon, and I've already been taking diligent notes on the fellow observer states here to schedule interviews. I'm very fascinated to learn more about your work and hope to keep in touch. Again, I'll put my information in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank Harvard University. And now I'd like to give the floor to Tangaroa Blue Foundation.
Mr. Chair, Executive Secretary, INC Secretariat and observers, for this opportunity to provide reflections on the organisation of work for INC-5. I'm from Tangaroa Blue Foundation, an Australian-based NGO working to reduce marine pollution in Australia and other regions by engaging citizen scientists. I'm also from the Centre for Sustainable Development Reform based at the University of New South Wales and the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership. Our work focuses on addressing the plastics data gap by supporting countries to understand plastic flows in their economy, developing data-driven national action plans and national data systems and inventories, and strengthening the transparency, integrity and equity of the Global Plastic Treaty. We are very appreciative of the Chair's significant efforts in preparing the non-paper and proposed organisation of work. We welcome the structure of the Chair's non-paper 3 as a starting point for discussions at INC-5, but emphasise the need for some improvements, including additions, enhancements and deletions. As observers focused on a regime that promotes transparency, ambition and accountability, we are concerned that should this non-paper become the basis of negotiations, there are critical elements related to transparency and accountability that need to be addressed. We respectfully note that aspects of transparency and accountability will warrant careful consideration in the ways of working to ensure adequate time for discussions and to support an ambitious and effective implementation. We also note the importance of using the best available science and data and the urgent need to strengthen the science policy interface at all levels. These elements are essential for countries to establish realistic yet ambitious goals for reduction and improved management through national action plans, to monitor the implementation of those commitments, to ensure transparent and timely reporting on progress, to monitor global progress towards the goals outlined in the instrument, and ultimately to assess the effectiveness of the instrument. We welcome the Chair's guidance on how the compilation text and other inputs will be considered to ensure a comprehensive coverage of all elements, and we are ready to contribute constructively to achieve an ambitious consensus outcome at INC-5. Thank you.
Thank you to Tangaroa Blue Foundation. And now I'd like to give the floor to Engineers Australia.
Kaya, I'm Kala Snatiraja from Engineers Australia and also with the Scientists Coalition. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute. Engineers Australia, representing over 127,000 members, is committed to advancing the science and practice of engineering for community benefit. We welcome the efforts of the INC Chair and suggest several considerations. Plastic pollution, including microplastics and nanoplastics, does not discriminate between nations or peoples. Its transboundary nature affects everyone, demanding a concerted collective effort for safeguarding the health and well-being of all global citizens and our one planet. With 6 out of 9 planetary boundary conditions already crossed, time is not on our side. We must learn from our past delayed actions on hazardous chemicals and waste, such as tobacco, PFAS, asbestos, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, which are costing us hundreds of billions of dollars annually. In the US alone, plastic-related health issues are estimated to exceed $240 billion each year, so we must act swiftly to avoid repeating costly mistakes and include the highest possible ambitions in the treaty to end plastic pollution during negotiations in Busan. Engineers Australia supports the phasing out or banning of harmful polymers, chemicals and additives with clear timelines and binding regulations. We advocate for a comprehensive systems-wide life cycle approach to plastic management, including significantly reducing primary plastic production, designing for health and environment, improving waste management and promoting circular economy principles. Robust extended producer responsibility frameworks should hold producers accountable for their products, incentivizing sustainable and recyclable designs. Investment in research and development is crucial to discover impacts, new materials, improve recycling technologies, and develop efficient waste management systems. Global standards for product design, composition, and performance are needed to ensure new alternatives or recycled materials do not introduce new environmental or health hazards. Additionally, standardized methods for data collection and reporting to provide accurate and transparent information on plastic production, usage, and waste management are necessary. Effective data collection, monitoring, and reporting are critical for tracking progress and ensuring accountability. We emphasize the need for strong transparency and traceability measures, including tracking the movement of plastics through their life cycle and ensuring information about their composition and recyclability is readily available. Enhanced collaboration between governments, industry, and civil society, and a collaborative approach between public and private sectors, supported by innovative financing mechanisms, is vital to treaty implementation. Achieving our goal of finalizing a highly ambitious treaty in Busan will not only be a win for plastic pollution, but will also significantly contribute to addressing the crises of biodiversity loss and climate change. So we urge that all delegates strive to finalize the most ambitious treaty in Busan. Engineers Australia stands ready to support these efforts with our expertise and commitment to sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank Engineers Australia, and now I'd like to give the floor to Ocean Conservancy. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, we would like to thank you for convening this session and providing observers with the opportunity to deliver interventions, and we hope observers are afforded the same opportunity on the ground during INC-5 negotiations, particularly those of frontline, fence line, Indigenous and environmental justice groups. We extend our gratitude to the Chair, the Secretariat, the Bureau and the Committee for the commitment and dedication to ensuring we reach an ambitious treaty as we enter the final scheduled round of negotiations. Whilst we appreciate the intention of the Chair's proposed non-paper to provide a streamlined pathway for negotiations in Busan, Ocean Conservancy believes that Member States must continue to advocate for greater ambition beyond what is currently reflected in the text. The final treaty must provide an ambitious pathway to ending plastic pollution that provides a holistic approach covering the full life cycle of plastics, which we find alarmingly absent in the non-paper. Of particular concern is the absence of global targets for plastic reduction and the lack of recognition for sea-based sources of pollution, including abandoned, lost, or otherwise discarded fishing gear and aquaculture gear, or ghost gear. Ocean Conservancy believes provisions should include binding requirements to address the full life cycle of plastics to limit the environmental and human health impact of plastic pollution. The disproportionate focus on downstream measures, including waste management in the non-paper, without strong upstream measures will fail to address the plastic pollution crisis. Without strong provisions across the full life cycle of plastics, the treaty risks being ineffective and inefficient in fulfilling the mandate to end plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. As such, Ocean Conservancy calls on negotiators to support the inclusion of a globally binding, ambitious and time-bound targets for reduction of primarily plastic polymers. This is absolutely necessary to prevent plastic pollution. We also encourage negotiators to include a mandatory phase-out of problematic and avoidable single-use plastics and chemicals of concern within specified timelines. Regarding sea-based sources of plastic pollution, Ocean Conservancy urges Member States to support the inclusion of specific provisions for plastic fishing and aquaculture gear to prevent the occurrence and impacts of ghost gear, given that it is the most harmful form of marine plastic pollution and also has significant negative environmental as well as socioeconomic impacts, in addition to recognizing the disproportionate impact ghost gear has on less developed countries and small island developing states. In the face of a triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, this treaty represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take unprecedented action to prevent environmental and human health. These recommendations stem from the belief that this process is more than just a treaty. It is a roadmap towards a future where people and the planet thrive, unburdened by the weight of plastic pollution. Thank you, Chair.
I thank you. Thank you very much to Ocean Conservancy. And I believe now we have Emoyu Jeffrey International. Please, you have the floor. Emmanuel, Jeffrey International. If you can hear me. No, maybe not. We are still having some connection.
Hello, hello, Chair.
Okay, yes, great.
Hello?
Yes, we
This
hear you.
is
Yes, we hear you now. Please, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Chair. I have had some technical issues. Now, I'll just be brief. I hope you are getting me.
Yes, we hear you. We don't see you, but we hear you. Please.
At least, I'll just be brief that on the issue of information, mine, I just wanted to make an observation that on the issue of access to information or availability of information on issues of concern on plastics, that as observers, I don't know, the treaty need to come out very clearly that observers are also empowered to give us this information so that together with member states, we hold those the stakeholders accountable when it comes to whether manufacturing food chain of plastics. We require at least early information that can empower us so that we also have to know. Otherwise, leave all these member states alone. There are challenges that we may not have trusted so much member states because they are also add information for us. So at least that need to be considered. And then when it comes to financial accessibility, observers also require some technical assistance so that we know exactly what goes on into manufacturing of plastic pollution from in terms of the value chain up to the end user. So I hope, because of time and I got late, and I hope that's my observation I can make, that the treaty needs to rope us in so that we also have the ability that we work together hand in hand with member states. Otherwise, because not all member states have the same ability of absorbing these non-state actors when it comes to working together. At times, we are also sidelined, so we need this second round also to be given enough position. Thank you, Chair.
I thank you. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Please, you have the floor, Sasakawa Peace Foundation.
Thank you, Chair. This is Dr. Imadul Islam from Sasakawa Peace Foundations. And today we stand a very pivotal moment for environmental progress. On behalf of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, I wish to emphasize profound significance of creating a legally binding instrument to eliminate plastic pollution, very practical ground. Since we are a very big think tank and we are working on the plastic pollutions under different divisions, one called the Ocean Policy Research Institute, from global north to south and Arctic nation to the polar side and every part of the world. From our experience, we found that, Mr. Secretary, that only we can actually reduce the plastic pollutions through creating awareness among the community. So 40% is totally possible if we would like to eliminate the plastic pollution. So, and totally this is relevant to the behavior, and behavior intention is totally actually perceived descriptive norms. So if you would like to change the perceived descriptive norms, we have to introduce the environmental educations. So my argument from our experience in the Sasako Peace Foundation in the different countries in the world that INC-5 and also the treaty should give emphasis of the implementation strategies that to focus on the actually environmental education. And in this environmental education, it should be start with not in the actual tertiary education, it should be start with the primary educations. If our people and next level generation is very prepared and aware about them plastic pollution, so it is automatically minimize or eliminate the plastic pollution. Since we are very much compromising stage, now we are not eradicating the plastic pollution. So we just would like to eliminate the plastic pollution. When we are talking on this way, so it's as academician, as a researcher, is totally relevant to the at least the one ground is behavior. So as theory of normative social behavior already proved that in the different ground that behavior intuition is totally determined by the perceived descriptive norms. To change these perceived descriptive norms, we should promote the environmental education. So in other words, in INC-5, in the section, we also found that we are talking about the recycling. So in terms of the recycling and alternative option, we should think about the anticipated cost. So finally, together with the legally binding agreement, that priorities environmental education and awareness should be given. And thank you so much for Bushan negotiations.
I thank you. Thank to Sasakawa Peace Foundation. And now I would like to give the floor to our last speaker, that is the Red Latinoamericana y del Caribe por la producción de plásticos con metas globales vinculantes. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the Latin American and Caribbean Network for the Reduction of Plastic Production with Binding Global Goals. Our network has members from Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Uruguay, Chile, Costa Rica, and Ecuador. In our countries, we do grassroots work, and we live and see daily the health, environmental, cultural, and economic disaster that the irrational overproduction of plastics has produced. Therefore, we will not tire of insisting that if countries really want to solve this crisis, the reduction of the production of primary plastic polymers is essential as a first step. In our region, we are on alert for the slow violence produced by the chemical contamination of plastic and the false solutions promoted by the industry and its allied organizations that, under the deception of a supposed circularity of plastic, promote waste management practices and technologies that seriously impact the health of the populations and ecosystems. We understand the false solutions as projects, technologies, and economic instruments that are presented as alternatives to solve plastic pollution, but that are not really effective since they operate as distractions from real solutions, or worse still, their negative effects are more harmful and aggravate plastic pollution. Some of the false solutions that are sheltered under the umbrella of the circular economy of plastics are chemical recycling, incineration, co-processing in cement kilns, and any other form of energy recovery, the transboundary trade of plastic waste, bioplastics, technologies for cleaning and removing plastic waste from marine spaces, plastic credits, plastic neutrality, among others. All of these processes in our region exacerbate environmental injustice, violate human rights, and affect communities, indigenous people, and transfer the economical, environmental, and health costs to our countries. Therefore, we demand binding global targets for the reduction of plastic production. False solutions must be excluded in the plastic treaty. Chemicals must be considered in a separate article addressing their entire life cycle, and health must be a cross-cutting element in the treaty text. Thank you, Chair.
I thank you very much to the Latin American Network. And well, thank you so much for your interventions, your statements. Thank you very much for these very rich and insightful interventions. I also want to thank all the participants, and I hope that you found the interventions helpful as you prepare to INC-5. I want to underline my appreciation to all of you, as I said, for your participation in this webinar, and also for your engagement in this process. This landmark treaty will be an alive tool to guarantee that governments, scientists, civil society, industry, and individual citizens continue protecting human health and the environment from plastic pollution. We will need to continue working with the scientific community, not only to support robust research to inform future decision-making, but also to come up with innovative solutions. We have worked tirelessly to achieve the world's first legally binding instrument on plastic pollution because we understand what's at stake. Success at INC-5 will mean ensuring economic development in harmony with health, safety, and sustainability. You have mentioned this is our moment to make a meaningful difference. Together, we must ensure that the decisions and actions taken at INC-5 truly reflect the interests of the planet and all of its inhabitants. By embracing dialogue, cooperation, and bold actions, we can pave the way for a healthier future for everyone. I trust that we can reach a strong and unified agreement at INC-5. So we will take an essential step toward protecting our planet and preventing an ecological tipping point. The science is clear. Plastic pollution possesses a rapidly growing threat to people and nature. That's why governments have come together to negotiate a legally binding instrument to end this global challenge urgently. Let's do our part to make this reality. I thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all next week in Busan. Thank you, and this webinar is closed. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks a
Bye-bye.
lot.
Thank you.